Brenda De Cruz welcome you to an English lesson in drama for class 10. The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. The act and the scene that I am taking up today is Act 3, Scene 3. A snippet on William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare and his contemporary dramatists broke boundaries in classical comedy writings to create a new genre in writing comedies known as romantic comedy, wherein both the romantic and the comic elements merge to delight the audience. The idea was not to educate or highlight vices or dishonesties that prevailed in the society, but to entertain the theatre-going audiences. And so, Shakespeare wrote Merchant of Venice to create innocent laughter and not to poke fun at follies and foibles. I hope by now our student listeners have become more liable, concerned and curious to this new form of learning. So it is required of you to follow the act and scene in your textbook. Please see that you have a writing pad or a rough page with a pencil close to you so that you can, if you listen to certain facts or details which are important and of concern, you can write it down or jot it down immediately. Let's call to mind the plot in Act 3, Scene 2 before we move on to Act 3, Scene 3. We saw that Bassanio arrived at Belmont to play at the Lottery of Caskets. Portia delays and directs Bassanio on outward appearances through a song and hidden clues. Bassanio is successful at the Lottery of Caskets. He wins over Portia, and love triumphs. Portia is unable to have a grasp over the joys and blessings that have come upon her. Gratiano and Nerissa are in love and seek to marry. Celerio turns up with news. The loss of Antonio's ships, thus unsettling the cheery atmosphere in Belmont. Portia provides both financial and moral assistance to Bassanio so he could be with Antonio in Venice at the earliest. The marriage ceremony takes place at once of both Portia, Bassanio, and Gratiano and Nerissa. Bassanio leaves for Venice without further delay to be with Antonio. I hope this has stimulated your thinking skills to summon up the plot in Act 3, Scene 2. Let us proceed further with Act 3, Scene 3. Now, what are we looking forward to in Act 3, Scene 3? We as the audience are taken back to Venice. Antonio is walking the streets of Venice bound by a gauela. Shylock takes pride in Antonio's helplessness and insists on having his bond and nothing else. Antonio gives in to his fate and hopes Bassanio arrives in time to see him loyally clear of the debt. Lines 1 to 39. Act 3, Scene 3. We witness the presence of Shylock, Salarino, Antonio, along with Gauela. Gauela is a jailer. The scene begins with Shylock asking Gauela to guard Antonio closely. He tells him, "This is the fool who lends money without interest." The lines said by Shylock are, "Gawela, look to him. Tell not me of mercy. This is the fool that lent out money gratis. Gawela, look to him." While Antonio very gently tries to seek Shylock's attention and pleads to listen to his plea, Shylock shuns him off. He says, "I'll have my bond. Speak not against my bond. I have sworn an oath that I will have my bond." Shylock further adds, "You called me a dog before you had a reason to do so. Therefore, since I am a dog, beware of my fangs. Thou calledst me dog before thou hadst a cause. But since I am a dog, beware my fangs." Shylock believes that the Duke will give him justice. He turns to the Gawela and reprimands him as good for nothing. "How can you be so foolish as to bring him out at his request?" Antonio pleads with Shylock to hear him out, but in vain. Shylock insists on having his bond. He doesn't want to have a conversation with Antonio, and therefore requests him not to speak further. He voices at Antonio, "I don't want to be an easy, dumb fool, nod my head, sympathize, sigh, and surrender to Christian pleaders. Don't follow me. I will have no more word from you. I will have my bond. I'll have my bond. I will not hear thee speak. I will have my bond, and therefore speak no more. I will not be made a soft and dull-eyed fool to shake the head, relent and sigh, and yield to Christian intercessor. Follow not. I will have no speaking. I will have my bond." Salarino is extremely upset with Shylock and his misgivings. He calls him the most hard-hearted dog to ever live among men. It is the most impenetrable cur that ever kept with men. In response, Antonio says that he would leave Shylock alone and not follow him any further, as he is aware of the reason why Shylock wills to have his life. For he has often saved many men from the clutches of Shylock's debts. Therefore, he hates me. While Salarino doesn't doubt the Duke's justice in favor of Antonio, Antonio brings to light a feeling of contrast in the Duke's judgment on him as a Venetian citizen. The Duke cannot deny the course of law, for the commodity that strangers have with us in Venice, if it be denied, will much impeach the justice of the state, since that the trade and profit of the city consisteth of all nations. The Duke cannot prevent the law from taking its course. If the rights of the foreigners who live with us in Venice are denied to them, it will leave the justice of the state open to accusations. Since the business and profit of the city comes from traders from all nations, the foreigners will not have dealings with or risk their money in a state where the judges ignore the law and side with the citizen. Here, Antonio, citizen is Antonio, against the foreigner, that is Shylock. So, let's leave. Antonio says that the agonies and losses have so affected him that he will hardly have a pound of flesh on his body to give to his bloody creditor, referring to Shylock. All Antonio wishes and hopes that Bassanio is able to make it on time to see him pay his debt, and then he wouldn't care for anything else. Therefore, go. These griefs and losses have so abated me that I shall hardly spare a pound of flesh tomorrow to my bloody creditor. Well, Gauella, on, pray God, Bassanio come to see me pay his debt, and then I care not. By the end of Act 3, Scene 3, we see that Shylock is taking pleasure in Antonio's vulnerability. He is adamant and rigid in the want of the bond and his eagerness to have revenge. On the contrary, we see Antonio, the law-abiding noble, is as deserted, solemn, and has resigned to his fate. He ardently hopes Bassanio returns in time to witness, unfailingly pay off the debt. Students, please read Act 3, Scene 3 as often. It is a short, simple scene and wouldn't take much time to go through the dialogues, to understand and connect with the characters. We see how Antonio, has been shunned off by Shylock, and Shylock is all adamant and all rigid and all fixed on having his bond and taking his revenge. The play is getting more exciting, and we are going to move forward to the next act and the next scene. So, to keep your spirits high, keep reading the acts and the scene time and again to connect with the characters. It is very important because it develops a connectivity, and your analysis of the characters becomes clearer, and it will help you draft and frame and write your own answers. So it's time for me to take your leave. Thank you so much for listening. Happy learning.